Welcome everyone. A very good morning, afternoon and evening based on wherever you are, whenever you are listening to this video. I recently cleared this exam AZ-500, which is Microsoft Azure Security Technologies, and it is an associate level exam. I wanted to share my experience on how I prepared for this exam, which I think will be helpful if you are trying to go for it. And there are certain good resources already available with us. And I will tell you how you can try out various different technologies which are part of this security stack, which otherwise we don't really get an opportunity to work on a day-to-day basis. Hence, a little bit of hands-on is helpful to remember certain subtle features of those specific technologies. We'll explore that in a moment. My name is Riju, and I'm a cloud solution architect reporting to Microsoft. So let's begin this. Now, to start with this, what you need to do is that you need to open your browser and search for AZ-500, and you will land to this page. So you use AZ-500 as your search text, and you get the landing page. This is an important and one single stop shop for everything you need for this exam. So I will walk you through the content of this page and highlight a couple of areas which you need to focus on. So if you look into this page, right, it is a section talks about what it basically does, what exam it is, etc. Now, there is an important information highlighted already, which says the passing score is 700, just like any other Microsoft cloud-based exam. 700 is the standard. If you score 700 out of 1000, you will be able to clear that. Now, this exam consists of around something 50 to 60 questions depending on random load, and they are weighted based on the kind of questions they are. Sometimes it has more marks than the other one, so it is not never equally distributed among the questions you get. So suppose if you get 50 questions, it doesn't mean all of them consist of 20 marks. It might so happen one could have 5 marks and one could have maybe 25 marks. So like that, these questions are randomly loaded when you start the exam, and once you go through all the questions, you get to know the result immediately as soon as the exam is over and you click on done. Now, what is the content, like the curriculum or the syllabus of this exam looks like? For that, you have to come to this green highlighted area, and that's where you will find something called Review AZ-500 Study Guide. This is an important page you need to always keep handy. So probably while you are preparing, keep it in your desktop as a shortcut so that you can see the content. Earlier it used to be a PDF file. Now they have made it a portal, which is kind of like easy to update, and then there is no confusion of having an older PDF with the older syllabus versus something which is new, right? Sometimes we share the PDF and then people might be preparing for that. So they basically tell you the date, right? That's May 2nd. That's when this exam got some update, right? And you can see that it is split across 4 different major categories, right? And they have some percent. And this percent really identifies what is the weightage of the questions which might come. So when you consider 1000 marks, suppose 25 to 30% of that marks, which is 250 to 300, will come from this part of this section, curriculum, right? And if you go further down the line, you'll find a drill down of that manage identity and access, what it contains. So it contains a couple of sections. You can see that about Azure Active Directory, about authentication using Azure Active Directory. So basically, this is an Azure Active Directory specific topic. And as I was talking earlier at the beginning, that especially if you're working in an enterprise scenario where the Azure is already established, Active Directory is some area where you don't get a chance to work on a day-to-day basis. Neither you have access to that, right? It is only those privileged Active Directory admins who can make changes, and you cannot really have a playground for the Active Directory. This is the heart and soul of your system, so it is kind of like very super restricted and out of reach for many of us. So this is the place where we probably need a little bit of hands-on to practice things out, to be able to remember the options available, because the questions will ask you certain if but kind of thing, where if you have a hands-on experience, it is easy to remember rather than studying it. At least for me, if I can do things, then it stays with me for longer, right? So that's the kind of like approach I take. Then after that, you have the networking specific thing, which is virtual network security, which involves NSGs, ASGs, all those things, private link, private endpoint, right? Service endpoint, and all those firewall, DDoS, everything about network, right? And then the third section is about storage and database, because your data needs to be secure, or it's not just about application, but also the data security is key important aspect. So it talks about various different options available, and you can see that how you can plan those things for compute, for storage, because compute can also store the data. For example, in the AKS cluster, you can have a persistent storage, and that can hold some files. How do you secure that persistent storage being data, prevent the data being leaked out of that secure storage, is something which is covered here. And then the typical blob storage, table, queue is also involved, because they all contain data, and Azure SQL database and SQL managed instance are the two key relational databases available as a platform as a service in Azure, which is what important part of your data stays and needs to be secured. So what all options do you have over there? In terms of managed security operation, it is 25 to 30%. You can see that from the list of weightages. If I go on top, um, you identify that Active Directory, which is the first one, contains 25 to 30, and the managed security operation is 25% to 30. So while you are preparing for this exam, just this is an indicator where you need to be focused more, or put more effort, or go a bit thorough than the other sections. I'm not saying that you will neglect other ones, but at least you will not put the same effort for preparing the securing networking versus preparing the Active Directory. So Active Directory needs a little more intense study, because it can contain more marks. So there is no guarantee that it will only have the 30%. It could have 25%, then it becomes equal to the top one of the secure networks. So this is an identification or indication for you to identify what is important and how much effort you need to put. So if you feel that it's not properly prepared, put a lot of effort, extra effort, to make sure it is done. And then you have the security ops, right, which is also like how do you enable the Azure policy, blueprint, key vault. Those are all the enterprise level features which is needed for any Azure landing zone today in any enterprise scenario. And last but not the least is the defender for cloud, right? And then how do you ensure the defender for cloud is available, how it is part of your production workload, at least if not all, and then how do you monitor, alert, and send the data to the SIM solution like Sentinel, which is a Microsoft Azure offering, right? So you can actually look into this from a pure operation perspective, where applications are created, uh, deployments are done, production is ready, end users are using, but then what? Going forward, we need to monitor, like if there is any hanky-panky stuff happening over there. There's a bunch of resources available, which are basically linked to Microsoft Azure documentation, official. One of the key disclaimer or the assurance which every Microsoft Azure certification gives is that if the data or the information is not available in the public official documentation, the question will not come from those places. So it is all written in the documentation. But with that fact, documentation can be rabbit hole, because if you click in one of the links, right, it has got further links, the tree menu, just like this one, and you keep clicking, and then you go into a bit more intense detail, and it's kind of like looks like never ending. And then Microsoft engineering team keeps adding them on a frequent basis. So you basically will see a lot of intense information being shared over here. However, I would encourage you to, these are all for a bit more deep dive, but if you are studying for the exam, I'd like to walk you through some, at the bottom of this. Once you schedule the exam, right, you can just go and sign up from here, and it'll take you to a different website, which is a partner site, and then you can schedule the exam, provide all the detail. But after that, there is a preparation section called 2 ways to prepare. Every exam page has that at the bottom of this. Do not miss this. This is the gold mine for exam preparation. What it does, it has a set of Microsoft learning module collected as a learning path. Now you can see that it has managed identity and access, and this is the manage identity and access learning path, and it contains 5 modules, right? You can log in and then keep track of where you are, so that you, once you come back next day, you can start from where you have left, so you don't have to remember. So going and starting things in the Microsoft official documentation might be a bit intense, but this is easy. So this is like reading a book which is very specific and prescribed to what is needed for this exam. And then definitely a deep dive is helpful. So if you think that this information is not enough, you can always refer to the official documentation and go deep dive. But that, at least this is something which is a good landing zone for you, right, to start with and feel comfortable. And then you can see that there are 4 learning paths based on the 4 sections, which is highlighted in this exam curriculum. And that's all you need to do. So use your login to Microsoft Learn. So you can sign in using your personal ID, and you will find that it will keep track of that. So if you use the same login, you come back to this learning module, it will tell you like where you are last. So automatic bookmarking is available, easy for studying. It's like a bookmark in a book, right? How you read a book. I put a bookmark using a piece of paper. That's just like that. So this is one way of studying it, and I feel very comfortable doing it because it is very focused, make sure that I know what is there in the content curriculum, and then I do the hands-on and a bit more deep dive. So this is what I like the most about this. So this makes my life so easy. Earlier I used to go for the exam book published by the Microsoft Press and then study it end to end before I go further deep dive into any of the specific topic. At least I know the full curriculum. It's like going into an exam after finishing the whole syllabus, right? So this is like kind of that confidence you get. Now, one of the things I talked about is how do you do hands-on? What are the labs? So Microsoft Learning does provide a public lab guide for you. So if you go to GitHub or you search in the thing, right, AZ-500 lab GitHub, you just search and see if it is coming. You can see that the first link gives me the Microsoft Azure Security Technologies, and it is part of the Microsoft Learning repository. So this is a repository for every certification. If you go in an official partner-based training, they do let you practice in a lab environment. And all the lab materials are available. That means you can also do it by yourself without going into those trainings, but you have to get this subscription, build those labs by yourself. So if you see here, all files labs, are the different labs. If you go into this instruction labs, you have got labs, 15 labs available. For example, you want to try out Azure policy. So how do you do that lab? You go into the lab manual and you see that it talks about how do you, what is that, and then what are the exercises you can do it, right? And then gives you a little bit of information, right? Um, can I do create a resource group, and all this step-by-step guideline are available over here in this lab to help you implement certain things. So if you haven't created Azure policy anytime before, I would highly recommend that you go and do this lab once. Then it stays with you for a very long period of time, and you will find when you have similar, let's say, questions around this topic to answer. So you notice here that there are 15 labs available. So if you get time to practice all the labs, at least I did it. But if you are, let's say, confident enough and have done a lot of NSG implementation, Azure firewall implementation during your day-to-day job, you don't have to do this lab because you have done much more intense work. But let's say I haven't really done any MFA conditional access set up in the environment because I work with enterprise and I don't get the chance to touch their Active Directory. So I will go and practice it because I have never implemented that by myself, right? So those are the areas. For example, I have implemented a lot of Azure monitoring. I've secured the storage. I have used the Defender for cloud. So these are the areas for me um, which are low in priority, but I have done it just to revise myself, thinking like if I haven't done any specific thing within that specific kind of technology, I might be learning something new. So it is also a good learning exercise if you could do all the lab. In fact, if you go in a classroom-based training for this certification, you'll have to do all the labs. Okay, that's the part of that classroom exercise activity apart from the theory, but this is all hands-on. So what I wanted to emphasize over here is that this exam is a bit intense in the sense like it covers a lot of areas, and this is one way is very unique because a lot of security areas are kind of hidden away in the real enterprise implementation or real production implementation. Hence, it is important for us to do a thorough theory and the lab together, have a good balance, okay, and then appear for the exam. And I wish you all the best for this exam. This is a good learning activity. Even if you only prepare for this exam and couldn't get time to sit for the exam or whatsoever that reason is, just by preparing this certification will help you know a lot more thing, and it will help you implement certain things in a real production scenario because it talks about everything real. Security is real in every deployment today, in every cloud. In Azure, it is so important that you make sure it is part of your initial design. Hence, this certification gives you so much platform and confidence when you talk and design the solution based around Azure security. So hope it was helpful, and I wish you all the best for your exam. Thank you very much and have a great day.